Hello everyone, good morning. Welcome to our channel. Today I brought to you a new video related to Linux. That is part 1 of the introduction to Linux. I'll be discussing with you the features of the Linux operating system, followed by its architecture, its use cases, and then we'll finally jump on to the terminal to actually execute the Linux commands. So before we begin, we'll discuss what is the Linux operating system. So Linux is an open source operating system that manages computer hardware and software. So the most important part here is that Linux is open source. It's an open source operating system that is going to manage your computer hardware and software. Unlike other operating systems which generally rely upon the graphical user interface, the GUI, to perform certain tasks, Linux explicitly relies on CLI to a very large scale to execute commands to perform tasks. So who created it? It was created in 1991 by Linus Torvalds. Open source, this is very important that Linux is open source, meaning the source code which is there is freely available to everyone. So anyone can go on to customize it. So Linux also supports multi-user uh, tasks. It is used to, access the system by multiple users at the same time. So multitasking is there. Linux supports running multiple programs simultaneously and it is highly secure. Today, one of the most secure operating systems which you will find in the market is Linux. It has a very strong security and stability and ideal for the virtual servers. What are the use cases? What are the applications? Today, Linux finds its place in the DevOps environment, into the cloud platforms, and multiple embedded system applications. What are the different distributions of Linux? In normal terms, you can also call this as the flavors of Linux. So Linux comes in various flavors like Ubuntu, Red Hat, CentOS, Debian, Amazon Linux, which I'll be using today to perform certain tasks to execute certain commands onto the terminal. Again, the most powerful tool in Linux is the CLI, that is the command line power, the command line interface that is used to efficiently manage the system. Finally, where it is used, as I mentioned, it's used in the embedded system, it's used in Android applications, it's used in the cloud environment. So this is a basic about the Linux system. So when we are discussing about the Linux system, it's always very important to compare the Linux operating system with Windows. So we all are very familiar with the Windows operating system, but there are very strong points of comparison between Linux and the Windows operating system. In the first place, as I mentioned, Linux is open source. That is, it's completely free, unlike Windows, which is paid. So this is one of the most important points in an interview. An interviewer can ask you to differentiate between Linux and the Windows operating system. So the first point should be that it's open source. Linux operating system is open source, whereas Windows comes with a price. Secondly, security wise, Linux is more secure as compared to Windows. Probably because of its exposure towards the internet world. Second is interface. When it comes to interacting with the Linux operating system, the most convenient and the most efficient way is using the CLI, that is the command line interface. Unlike GUI, which we use in the graphical user interface, which we use in the Windows system. Then customization, it's highly customizable. The Linux operating system, but Windows comes with a lot of limitations, which we all know. Performance wise, it's lightweight. Linux is very lightweight and it runs well on older hardwares as well. So performance wise, Linux is very fast and it occupies less space as well. Coming to the software, installation of Linux based softwares are two packages. Cost, Linux is free, as I mentioned previously. Who uses it? Linux is being used by developers, system admins, tech enthusiasts, and it finds its application in the cloud environment, the development environment, the embedded system, and servers. Whereas Windows we use in day-to-day general purpose based applications. I'll move on towards the architecture of Linux operating system. So when it comes to Linux, the most two important things are the kernel and the shell. Now, what is kernel and what is a shell? So the kernel is the core of the Linux system. You can also call it as the heart of the operating system. So it manages the resources. How does it manage the resources? It manages the resources depending upon the commands being executed by the user. So who and how the user is going to execute the task, execute commands, and give inputs to the kernel. He is going to give inputs to the shell. So kernel, again, it acts as a bridge between hardware and the software, and it runs in the background. It is always supposed to be active. So shell, what is a shell? The shell is a command line interface, and it takes commands from the users, and whatever is the command, those commands are sent to the kernel to execute it. So how is the workflow, how is the Linux architecture workflow going to operate? Whenever user is going to give a command on the terminal, whenever a user passes a command onto the terminal, normally it's being interacted with the shell, and the shell then interprets the kernel to manage the system resources and interact with the hardware. Depending upon the request of the user, the hardware configurations are the hardware, not the hardware configuration, but the devices, the memory, the storage, and the performance based tasks are executed depending upon the request served by the user. So these are the two most important um, pillars of the Linux operating system, that is the shell and the kernel. So you should be very, easily be able to differentiate between the shell and the kernel. So this completes my first part of the session, that is, the theoretical part, that is the architecture. What I'll do is, I'll quickly switch on to the terminal. I'll quickly switch on to the terminal, and I'll try and explain you, how this execution part is supposed to be done. How are you going to, fire some commands onto the Linux terminal, and you're going to ensure that the work is being done. So what I'll do is I'll just try and maximize this a bit. Yeah, I think this is fine. So, you can execute commands on any platform. You can make use of virtual machines. You can make use of VirtualBox. You can make use of VMware. You can also make use of the WSL, that is the Windows subsystem for Linux. Any convenient way you can try and work on the execution of command. But in my case, what I'll do is I have already launched a virtual machine in Amazon Linux 2023 base server. I'll be using this interface to display you some set of commands, some basic Linux commands. So what I'll do is I'll just try and clear this. So the first command which I want to try and give a demonstration to you is pwd. What is PWD? PWD stands for the print the working directory. So whichever working directory you are working in presently, that will be displayed with the PWD command. So let's fire this command, PWD, and you get to know that you are being assigned, you are being working in the home/ec2 dash user. Fine. We'll move ahead. We'll move ahead. The next command I want to explain you is ls. ls is actually listing the files and directories in the current location. So the current location is home/ec2 users. In that ls, I'll be doing ls, that I'll be listing this. When I fire this command, I get to know that there are two entries here. One is cloud one and another one is file. So you can also distinguish as to what are this. Like cloud one, you can see it's in a different color, whereas file is being displayed in a different color. So one amongst them is a directory and other one amongst them is a file, actually a file. So how are you going to understand the properties of this listed documents or listed data onto the server? What I'll do is I'll just enter LL. LL stands for the list, long list, which displays the list of files with permissions, the owner, the size, and the data. So with LL, I will be understanding in detail that the cloud one, which is being displayed above, is a directory, whereas file is a the file which I've named, it's actually a file. So this is how you identify the permissions as well. So I'll be explaining these permissions in the coming sessions. I won't explain this read. These are called as read, write, execute for user groups and others. I'll explain this in the coming sessions, but as of now, LL for long listing, you try and identify the detailed list of files with permissions, its size, and the date. All right. So let's continue now. I'm done with this part. I'm done with the listing part. I'm done with the print working directory part. I'm done with the long listing part. I just want to, erase this off, which is there onto my terminal. What I'll be doing is I'll be just putting clear clear, and you can see that the data which I have worked upon has been, it's not being erased, it's being cleared just for the purpose to ensure that the terminal is clean and visible. We'll go to the next command. Before that, I'll see ls, I want to go into the cloud1 directory. We identified through long listing command ll that cloud1 is a directory. Directory in normal words is a folder. So what I want to do is I want to go into cloud1 folder. What I'll do is the command is cd, and I'll be just putting cloud, and once I put clo and I enter tab, it's going to auto take the name which is there. I need not enter the whole name, that is cloud1, and I'll press enter. And once I go into the next folder, that is cloud1, now I entered the folder that is cloud1. Again, I can see what's there in cloud1 by the long listing command. It tells me that again there is one more folder into cloud1, that is cloud2 and test1. Let's go into the next folder, that is cloud2. For that, again, I'll be using the command cd. Cd stands for change directory, followed by the name of the directory cloud2, and enter. Okay, now I am into the directory that is cloud2. How can I understand what's the path of this directory, where I am? For that, pwd is the command which you can use here again. That will show you that you are in the cloud2 directory, and the path is home followed by ec2 user followed by cloud1, and in that you are in the cloud2 directory. Now let's say from cloud2 directory you want to come just one step behind, that is into cloud1 directory. What are you going to do? You are just going to enter cd space double dot. You can see you have come into cloud1 directory. Just one step behind. You can verify the directory path, that is you are in home slash ec2 dash user cloud1. Again, I want to come back one more step behind. I can enter cd space double dot ls. Now I am into the main directory onto which I was working. So this is the use of the cd, that is the change directory command. Now if I want to make a new folder, what is the command? The command is going to be mkdir, that is make directory. I'll name the directory as DevOps, and I'll press enter. What will this do is it will create a new directory, that is a folder in normal words, with the name DevOps. Now I want to verify that. For that, I can again put ls. Here it comes. A new directory is being created with the name DevOps. Now you can enter into that directory, you can work into that directory as per the requirement. In the time being, I want to remove this directory. I want to delete this directory. For that, what I'll be doing is I'll be making use of the command rm-rf. If my work is completed, I want to remove this directory, I'll be pressing rm space hyphen rf followed by the name of the directory, DevOps, and the directory will be removed. So rm is one of the very crucial commands, and it has to be used very carefully. So rm stands for remove recursive forcefully followed by the name of the directory. Let's clear this now. Let's clear this now so that the terminal looks clean and we can proceed ahead. In the time being, if you want to know the Linux kernel version, the architecture type, you can enter this command unim hyphen. Now what does this command do is it gives you the Linux kernel version, that is 6.1.166. This is the kernel version followed by the patch version. The patch version is 197.30. The architecture, that is the Amazon 2023. It is a system architecture, 64-bit, having 64-bit processor. So this is a way you can identify the architecture. Again, you want to understand some detailed information about the Linux operating system. For that, you can just do cat etc os release. So I have not entered the whole word. I have just, after os, I have just pressed tab, so it auto takes the existing command which is there. So it's going to display me in the version, it's Fedora, it's 2023, it's Amazon based Linux version which I'm been using. So this is another way you can, try and to go and to understand the operating system. I'll clear this. Now you want to understand how do I read a file? For that purpose, I have created a file with the name file. So it's a file. How do you understand it's a file? By long listing. File, the name file, it's dash here. That means it's a file. I want to read this file. How am I going to read this file? Just cat it, cat, followed by the name of the file. Yes. So what does the file read? Whatever content in the file it is going to be there, that is going to be read onto the system. Like I have mentioned here that AWS is a cloud platform that is going to be read by the command cat. So in short, whenever you say commands are predefined programs that can be executed in a convenient way through the terminal, which is going to interact with the Linux shell by which the kernel is going to actually perform some task. Apart from that, there are some basic commands which we can use, like date. You want to understand what's the date, time. For that purpose, you can make use of the date command. Again, you want to know which is the user who is working, through which user you are working. You can make use of the who am I command. So these are some of the basic commands which are normally used in day-to-day activities. So I'll be coming up with a new video. I'll be coming up with some advanced Linux commands in the part 2 of the session. Before that, I if you have liked the video, if you have liked the video, do like it and do subscribe to the channel. I'll be coming up in the next video with some advanced commands of Linux in the part 2 of Linux session. Thank you.